Hello, I am Seth, and I am here reproducing a talk that I gave on December 9th, 2023 at the Rosicrucian Salon at the Grand Masonic Temple in Manhattan. I am an artist of esoteric themes. I'm a painter, particularly of alchemical subject matter. And I gave this talk because a friend of mine suggested that I lead people through a little pathworking of some of the imagery in my paintings. And if you don't know what pathworking is, it's a fairly common practice in esoteric work where if you want to learn more or gain some information about an esoteric theme or an occult symbol or a particular force or entity, basically you set up a ritual space of sorts, you call forth that thing that you want to learn from or talk to, you say a prayer to the angel or whatever, and you have some means of seeing, meaning you have perhaps a crystal ball or a scrying mirror or a bowl full of water, or if you're, say, trying to learn about tarot card, maybe you set that tarot card up in front of you, and then you go into it, and you follow a stream of visionary imagery which comes up. And if you're very skilled, you could just close your eyes and do this internally, right? Say in the tarot example, maybe you step into the card, you interact with the figure there, learn from them if they have anything to tell you, and then maybe you look off to the side past the frame of the card and you see a path and you go down the path to a village, etc. Right? This is very similar to Carl Jung's active imagination practice. Okay. So, the subject of these works is alchemy. But when I say alchemy, I do not mean the mere proto-chemistry that most people think alchemy to be today. That is, simply fools trying to make gold from lesser metals. But instead, I am talking about, you could say, a spiritual alchemy, or in accordance with the theme of this event, a Rosicrucian alchemy, an art that ties together the earthly and the heavenly, whose goal is the profound transformation of the alchemist, him or herself. But that doesn't mean, don't let the word spiritual make you think that you don't have to get your hands dirty and work in a laboratory, for that is central to this tradition and to what I am talking about here. Now, just a little historical setup here. Alchemy and Rosicrucianism have been tied together since the publication of the Rosicrucian Manifestos, which was in 1614 first. If you're not familiar with these manifestos were anonymously authored documents that appeared in Germany, which purported to be the product of a secret society operating throughout Europe under the aegis of Christian mysticism for the common good. And as you can imagine, this made quite a stir throughout Europe for quite a while after that. So alchemy and Rosicrucianism have been tied together since day one. And what I mean by that is, it's ironic actually, because in the Rosicrucian Manifestos, they're quite critical of laboratory alchemy. They call it ungodly and accursed gold making. But don't be fooled by that, because just a few years prior, Johann Valentin André, the man who we are almost certain either wrote the manifestos himself or was at least at the center of the collective that produced them, he had written his own book called The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, which is itself a real masterwork of chemical and spiritual allegory. And as the Rosicrucian furor spread across Europe in the centuries to follow, its relationship with alchemy only became more and more entrenched. And this is attested to in the numerous organizations operating under the name Rosicrucian, who had alchemical studies as part of their work. And you can see images from many of these groups here. Now, a little on this art of alchemy. Right? Alchemy was called the art. And it was called the royal art for a couple of reasons. The royal art, number one, because it was often passed down through family lines of European nobility and royalty. But more importantly, number two, because its goal was to make you royal, spiritually royal. That is something like to make you immune to the trials and tribulations of the ignorance of this world, or even to make you something like an active angelic being of wisdom while still functioning in a physical body. Pretty easy. So, alchemy was something that involved the whole person. That is, everything from contemplation, right, with the mind, to prayer, the heart, to lifestyle, to diet, there's the stomach, and to physical work in the laboratory. So alchemy is a holistic art, a very old holistic art. For an alchemist without a lab can't really be called an alchemist, nor can a chemist without prayer. Requires both. Now, at this event, previous to my talk, we had this amazing talk by the great Persephone on talismans. And I'll take a moment just to tie that in here with what I'm talking about in saying that talisman, the word talisman appears in some translations of the Emerald Tablet. And if you're not familiar with it, the Emerald Tablet is something like the supreme, most pithy and concise statement of the alchemical art that we have. Right? It is also anonymously published. It's likely Arabic and medieval in origin, but we really don't know. And the Emerald Tablet, some translations, refers to the great mystery as the father of talismans. Father of talismans. And talisman here comes from the Greek telesma, which can mean something like a holy or miraculous object or a magical image. But for our purposes, telesma really means something like to complete or to perfect. That is, metaphysically speaking, when something comes from the source, it is coagulated into the flesh. Or on its journey into creation, it becomes a physical thing, like you or me. So that's what talisman means, that kind of completing. And thereby, a talisman is a physical object used to anchor or contain spiritual forces. And alchemy is the art of working with the spirit through physical means. Hence, it is a talismanic art. So, alchemy involved the whole person, the totality of your faculties. And for this reason, many of the great names in alchemical history were polymaths, masters of many disciplines. And I can't think of a better example for this than the great Count Michael Maier, whose music I used to begin and end this presentation. But I digress. So now let's take a little imaginative jaunt through the visual language of alchemy. I will guide you with my words through some of the imagery on the screen. And you can either simply follow along, following the images as they come. This is imagery mostly for my paintings, but I did put in some other historical stuff just to keep continuity with the tradition. So you can either follow along that way, or you can go inward and let your inner vision fill in the words, your imagination. Or, ideally, you can do both. Going back and forth, uniting the inner and the outer. For alchemy often delivers itself in the language of dream and reverie. And in that sense, this would be an appropriate way of working at this. So, let's begin. It is the 17th century. You are European, likely German, Czech, French, or Italian, and you have a good bit of coin, right? You're not poor. A good bit of coin to invest in this most secret of arts. The alchemists were fond of saying, you must have gold to make gold. Okay. So now in your home, you set up a laboratory, a holy and private place, stocked with equipment and imagery for contemplation. So now you may see yourself at your European home around sunset. And as the light of day comes to a close, then you bathe yourself ritually in prayer, washing your body at the basin, saying something like perhaps from the Psalms, "Cleanse me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Hide my face from my sins and block out all my iniquity. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew your steadfast spirit within me." And then you dry yourself off, and you put on a clean vestment. You approach the door to the cellar, where you light a candle reverently, and then you carry it with you down the stairs. At the bottom, you enter your laboratory. The flame of your candle here seems to glow, to grow, and to illuminate this space, which is full of equipment. And as you go around the room now, lighting other candles, the room itself appears to take on its own sort of glow. You use this space only for this most sacred work, and every time you enter it, you feel a sense of reverence, humility, awe, and quiet joy. A common motto of the alchemists was ora, lege, et labora. Read, pray, and work. Read, pray, and work. And you have set up your space in this laboratory accordingly. For reading, on one side of the room, you have a library. Shelves full of the volumes of the works of the wise men and sages of past ages. The contents of your library likely includes the Bible, the works of the Arabic masters of philosophy, astronomy, chemistry, physics, those that you're lucky enough to find, at least. The masterworks of Kabbalah, that is Jewish mysticism, and general esoterica collected from various corners of the Latin world, and, of course, copious handwritten notebooks of your own chemical experiments. Read, pray, and work. For prayer, on the opposite side of the room, you have an oratory. This little alcove likely contains a Causica cloth for healing, a large crucifix, open books of magical seals, the names of angels and of God written in Hebrew, perhaps some objects you created from your own chemical works, like a candle holder smelted together of various metals, engraved with magical names as symbols, an incense burner, a crystal ball for bath-working and gazing, perhaps. And then, in the center of the room, is your laboratory proper, containing shelves of various substances, plant, mineral, and metallic specimens in labeled jars. The walls and tables as well are lined with equipment, vessels, flasks, and retorts made of glass, copper, steel, mortars made of stone and agate, and in the center of the ring, the Athenor, the alchemical furnace. A stout little tower, almost as tall as you, in which you will heat the retort, the distillation flask, the alchemical vessel, the glass that holds the matter upon which you work. So now, you approach your furnace, you open a brick door in the side of this Athenor, and with your candle, you light the coals within. And as you light them, your inner vision comes alive. The alchemists commonly spoke in the language of myth and of dream, and here is why. In this fire you now see before you, you see the fire the ancient Stoics wrote was at the center of the earth, here at the center of your operating furnace. This is the fire of Tartarus, of Hades, the fire of the depths, and it is the fire of the world's end in Revelation. As the alchemists were fond of saying, all things are renewed by fire, and hence fire is your primary tool in this work, for heat is the catalyst for chemical changes within the glass. Now, you take a jar off one of your shelves. It has a mineral in it, antimony sulfide, which you have collected previously from a mining site outside of your village. It is a dark stone ore, rough-hewn in shape. And you take a quiet moment to identify with this mineral. The alchemical first matter, or Prima Materia, which you now hold in your hand, is sometimes symbolized, depicted, as a dragon. A dragon, for the matter, the mineral, straight out of the mine, is rough, as if covered in scales. And, of course, it lives underground. And it may be poisonous. Symbolically, this is your own animal nature, right? Your own lower self, your own animal instincts, which are to be refined and corrected in this work, right? In contemporary language, this is your reptile brain. This is the rough ashlar of the Freemasons. And though you wouldn't know it by merely looking upon it, this is the matter which, when put through the proper chemical procedures, is to become the philosopher's stone, an ideal substance so much more perfect than gold that it transmutes other metals into gold in its mere operational proximity. So now, you place this first matter in a glass distillation flask, and you set the flask atop the hot coals. It is now time to set your intention and pray as the operation begins. Upon studying the first matter, in a flash of intuition, the proper patron for this work came to mind. Jupiter. The alchemists of the 17th century were Christians, but not of the ordinary sort. As Rosicrucians, perennialists, they saw the underlying thread that knits all spiritual expressions together. So now, you piously kneel before your candle, before your furnace, and recite a Pater Noster, an Our Father. And then you open up a book from your library full of the Orphic hymns, and you recite the Orphic hymn to Jupiter. Jupiter to the Romans, Zeus to the Greeks. He is appropriate for this work today, for he is the king of Olympus, god of gods and king of kings. And as such, you petition him that he will grant you the sovereignty, the royalty that he holds in this operation, that this operation be a success and you be made a king as well. Spirit king. So after the invocation of Jupiter, you look upon the glass flask holding the matter above the fire, and the mythological story of the god plays out before you. When you look at this first matter now, you see Prometheus. Prometheus stole the fire from the gods in the Homeric myth. And this means that this matter, though it looks nondescript, it carries within it its own fire. In the language of alchemy, this is the secret fire, right? It carries the spark of its divine origin. In Christian terms, though this is the stone that most will merely refuse as simply some useless rock, the wise will make it their cornerstone. In the legend, Prometheus' punishment for his theft was to be bound to a rock, his guts eternally pecked open by the eagle of Zeus, Jupiter. This is to say, it is Jupiter who brings out the power from the body. But for Prometheus, the matter itself, this just looks like dying. The matter turns black under the heat in the glass. Mythologically, this is also the story of Persephone. Persephone, the virgin stone, is kidnapped into the underworld, the realm of death, by the god who wears the black mask. This is Hades, the brother of Jupiter. And this brought winter upon the land. As you watch the flask now, the matter at the bottom is black and inert. But you see fumes arising from it within the glass, climbing to the top of the glass flask like clouds in a little world. And as they cool against the top, then dripping back down the sides, which looks like rain. This is the distillation cycle, and it is to be done 7 times. Because it rises in the flask, these are called eagles. That is, Jupiter's eagle must fly 7 times. And often if you look at the old texts, if there's an image of a bunch of eagle-looking birds, you can count the birds, and this is to tell you how many times this operation is to be distilled. So in this period, the matter remains black. If anything, turning only blacker. It takes on the color of death, and the flask now is as a tomb. And then there is the smell. The reaction reeks of putrefaction and decay. And as what happens within the alchemical vessel is a mirror for your life, you will see this depicted all around you for this period. Weeks pass while the stuff in the flask remains black. You feel tired throughout your days, weak and depressed. The colors in your world seem dimmer than before, and you experience loss repeatedly. You get sick easily. Symbolically, this is referred to as the 40 days in which Christ wandered fasting in the desert. or to his trials and tribulations before death. This is the dark night of the soul. And at times here, your faith is so tried, you barely seem able to believe in anything anymore. And then, one day, you enter the laboratory, as usual, to view the flask, to spy something different. You bound from the open door to view the furnace, almost dropping your candle to look into the flask, and what you see there causes you to gasp. The blackness now has given way to color. When you look in the flask now, you see blues, purples, silvers, flashes of yellow, like an oil slick. And to see this with the matter you have put so much into, your heart almost feels like it can burst. Your prayers have been answered. This is the dawn at the end of the great night. The colors that appear here, this phase is often known as the tail of the peacock, Cauda Pavonis, and it is referred to as Jacob's coat of many colors. And it is referred to as the regime of Jupiter, as it displays the great colors of the god. The regime of Jupiter, of course, is following the regime of Saturn. Saturn is the blackness, the god of death, and Saturn is the father of Jupiter, hence giving birth to the color. And the color particularly on display here, particularly associated with the god Jupiter, is Tyrian Purple, the color of his royal robes. The rich pigment of kings produced in the ancient world with great labor from thousands of murex snails. An operation so labor-intensive, of course, only the wealthiest could afford it. And now, when you step back and look at the glass vessel, in your mind's eye, you see it as the circle with the cross on top, the Globus Cruciger. This is the symbol of both the rough and immature first matter and of the perfected and completed final matter. It is the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar of the Freemasons, the alpha and the omega of the operation. And it is the symbol seen portraits throughout the ages, held by kings and by Christ himself. The symbol of divine sovereignty, the true goal of the alchemical work. And when you look at the matter now in the flask, atop it is a stellated pattern that has appeared, a star shape. This is called the Star of the Magi. This is the star that rises from the night to lead the philosopher alchemists to the manger in Bethlehem, where they will witness the birth of the Christ child, the philosopher's stone. From here, this is to say that this first work, having been completed, now the alchemist is to follow the star, to follow divine intuition and revelation through the further laboratory work which will be revealed unto you, to approach the final perfection. And this star is also sometimes called Regulus, the little king, Christ child, and that's also the name of the star in the sky at the heart of the constellation Leo, the lion, also the symbol of Christ victorious. Now, the alchemical work is sometimes depicted as a mountain. A mountain. A supreme spiritual symbol throughout basically every culture ever. The mountain, of course, is the place of ascension, where we go from our horizontal world up towards that place of perfect unity at the top, peak. The goal, of course, is to reach the peak, but It is said that he who even enters the castle at the base of the mountain has already gone farther than most will. From there, it is merely a matter of following the path, a path universally described by the mystics, yet utterly unique to you. The path, unfortunately, is treacherous, for just as one can fall off the steep mountain cliffs, and one must pass dangerous animals guarding the way, just as in the laboratory, the alchemist is in danger of poisonous vapors, explosions, and the ever-present danger of burning the precious matter, of cracking the glass vessel, and of losing months or years' worth of labor and expense all over a single mistake. Just as in one's own spiritual transformation, the dangers of at best losing faith, and at worst going totally insane. Ideally, he will reach the mountain peak. Having shed all lesser concerns, he is to unify in devotion with the One, experiencing the ecstasy of the chemical wedding with the divine. Now, the alchemical wedding is sometimes depicted by the god Mercury in duplicate form. An androgynous god, Mercury is sometimes depicted in male and female aspect, to be wed in erotic union, becoming the divine hermaphrodite, the symbol of perfect wholeness. Now, just as this great work of ascent has been completed from one perspective, there is something yet more to do. For just as the snake swallows his own tail, what goes up must come down. And as our hero has dissolved into the subtle ether of the spirit, he now is to coagulate again, re-entering the world into the marketplace to spread the good news. Or in chemical terms, he has attained the Philosopher's Stone, but he is now to use it to transmute other metals into gold. He has become a sage himself, so his task now is to light the fire within others, to lead them as well unto that one unspeakable mystery. So that, basically, is how alchemy works.